Welcome to the Independent Workforce, the podcast where we explore the now and the future of work through the lens of temporary employment, such as freelancers, contractors, fractional experts, you name it. Here we speak with CEOs, recruiters, founders, and industry leaders about how they work with independent talent, the wins, the challenges, and the lessons learned. My name is Yurii. I'm growing the freelance market at FreelancerMap, an international platform that's been connecting top independent professionals with companies for over 20 years. And my guest is Jack Spencer, a flexible workforce specialist with over a decade of experience helping enterprises work smarter with freelance talent, the founder of Freeflexer, co-founder of Club Redundo, who's also led enterprise partnerships and YunoJuno, working with global brands across media, tech, and finance. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Yuri. Great to be here.
Super happy to talk to you. And once again, as we've talked before the recording, you are also connected with Human Cloud, with amazing Matt Motola. We had the conversation with him before, and Tony Buffum. We'll have the conversation with him a little later. So I feel like the world is intersected. So yeah, it's all about this independent workforce. So let's.
You can't keep those guys off podcasts, so I'm not surprised. They practically live on there.
You can't. You have to talk. You have to, bring the word out. That's exactly what we're doing. So let's start with you. So walk me through your professional journey. Like, what role do you play in the freelance ecosystem today?
Well, today is very different to where it started. Something of an outsider. I left art college about 25 years ago, and my first sort of career move was actually as a freelancer, as an independent worker in creative. I worked for a large record label here in the UK, creating visuals for live shows. So that was a bit of a tangent. I got pulled into technology and media as a space for about 10 years. I worked creating sort of native apps for live events, live environments, traveled the world deploying those and managing projects. And then my sort of people and technology journey started in about 2015, 2016, when I was a very early hire at a company called YunoJuno. At the time, a small sort of scrappy startup above the South Sudanese embassy in Fitzrovia, in a sort of really shabby little rented office, and now a global player on the freelancer management system side of things, and a really well-known freelancer talent marketplace as well. So I was part of that very long journey. I looked after the enterprise customer base, so I was responsible for the sort of commercial side of it. Crucially, don't lose any clients, and then the implementation and sort of project management piece as well. So how do we integrate? I left YunoJuno in 2023, and I have started my own business, which really relies on one little sort of kernel of an idea, which was how do we help businesses be more successful with their flexible workforce programs, beyond technology solutions, beyond sort of vendors coming into business, who owns that success internally and who creates the program around that to help businesses win. I think we live in an ecosystem that's filled with amazing solutions, but there's nobody that really typically sits inside a business that owns this stuff, that helps organizations sort of govern and manage a program of what flexible work looks like. And if we all accept, which I assume we do as viewers of this type of podcast, if we all accept the direction of travel is clear, what organizations need is the same structure and rigor that they have with their permanent workforce, right? So that's the idea behind Freeflexer. And then, as you said in your introduction, I've got my fingers in several other pies that we can talk about.
Hopefully this is the way, to create it, because I see like how many processes companies has about like hiring a full-time person, and it has this, and it goes and over again. You can hire one person for like 6 months, sometimes even a year. And I see the difference in the freelance world. I'm like, why the hell you don't have a process for hiring freelancers? It's so much easier.
Yeah.
I talk to people like Steve Rader, Yurii Lopez from different companies, from Mina Bastavros from Airbus. They have clear processes. It's so easy for them to hire freelancers. And I'm like, why the hell it's not the same way in many other companies? So I'm curious, like from your perspective, when you are talking to enterprises, organizations, like from the side of Freeflexer, what is one problem that you are solving for them with this contingent workforce?
Honestly, there's a myriad of sort of small flags that give away this one singular truth, but almost invariably, every single customer I speak to, we're talking about ownership. Organizations don't have in situ someone who is responsible for this stuff. And we can argue about the reasons behind that. For me, it's this sort of like organic creep. I think businesses traditionally had employees and employees did the work. It's just not the world we live in anymore. But it's not like there was an announcement, right? This stuff has been creeping for years and years, organically growing, loads of different drivers and sort of motivators behind not just why businesses do this, but also the workers themselves. So where we are today, I think, is businesses are waking up to the fact that, oh shit, we've got 20 to 40% of our workforce and they don't work for us. And we don't have any governance. We don't know how to onboard them. We don't know how to find them. We hardly know how to pay them. We're not very compliant. Like all of that stuff's just sort of mushroomed out of this idea of a slow creeping change in how work gets done. So yeah, you might get brought in for any number of reasons, be it compliance or budget or talent. But the reality is those are all symptoms, right? And the cause is no one owns it.
It's crazy. I mean, like, okay, from your perspective, who must own it? Like, maybe it's like a department or I don't know, a title, or I know it's like all over the place, but like in the ideal world, whose responsibility is to work with freelancers? Okay, let's not even use the word freelancers. It's like independent workforce.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the way I would sort of start with a business is probably saying, well, if you want to look at it like that, who owns your workforce at the moment? Because it tends to be a company-wide thing, right? Like, sure, HR might govern it, but who's responsible for the budget? Who's responsible for the legal? Who's responsible for productivity and innovation? That is a cross-functional sort of senior board level decision making team. And if you think this like flexible work just rolls downhill into a junior talent executive or a junior HR exec, and then boom, you're now responsible for 20% of the workforce. I think that's mad. And this is only going to get worse with AI, by the way, because if we sort of count them as a emerging workforce category, and you treat it like it's, I don't know, your LinkedIn license for the business or something. Like, no, it needs more rigor and governance than that. You have to have programs that manage this stuff. To me, honestly, it always would start cross-functionally. So you would go in at the top level because it has to have everybody's buy-in around not how do we manage this, but what are our aspirations? Maybe we'll talk a little bit around like decision making and what are the triggers to like get people to act on this stuff. But typically, when someone wants governance, it's because something's gone wrong. And I would always encourage businesses to actually start at the beginning of saying, what are our aspirations around this sort of talent cohort, but also what are our business objectives that we're trying to unlock with it? Those are the really almost existential questions that businesses should be asking around this type of talent.
From your experience and experience of clients you're working with, who usually starts this process? Like who is going like and say, oh, we need a freelancer, we need help. Like who is this person? I know that it's not one person, but like maybe like they paint several pictures here.
It's so the reasons I've been brought into businesses might be we have a compliance issue. We're non-compliant on some regulation, and we need help bringing that back into shape. So that might be tax and compliance. That might be HR that's flagged it. It might be even a sort of talent exec that's seen something on LinkedIn and is like, "Oh crap, I'm not doing that. I should be doing that." So it could be anyone like through that chain, or it could be like a hiring manager. It could be a department lead saying, "Well, we've won a big bit of business, and I don't have the resource for it." So any of those triggers can come from almost anywhere in a business. And it takes a bit of courage, I think, for organizations or people in those organizations to put their hand up and ask that question. I try to encourage businesses to be a little bit more proactive than that if they can. And although all of those triggers actually, they're completely reasonable and you should act on them, let that be the opportunity to build something more proactive. And rather than getting to within a month of a really important deadline and thinking, crap, we need to resource this and bring some people in, maybe start thinking a little bit earlier about what your sort of business objectives and outputs for the next quarter to 12 months might look like. So the triggers are similar, they can come from anywhere. But often it's to deal with a specific challenge, and that's a really common thread.
After someone made this question, what happens next? Where do they go? Like how to ensure that they actually will hire this person?
Yeah. Where do they go and where should they go are different things to me. But I would say that because
Yeah, exactly.
I try to implement programs. Often where they go is a supplier,
Hmm.
so they'll outsource to a vendor, be that something like a talent marketplace or a recruitment or staffing agency, or they might have like an internal skills marketplace. Like they'll try and find a fix for that specific problem. Typically, is what I find. So in the UK, we have the off payroll worker regulations known as IR35, and that's a really good example of an entire economy going, oh, we need to fix this one problem. So they all fix this one problem, often outsourcing the sort of classification and insurance and risk behind it. But they're not necessarily dealing with the fact that there's no sort of governance or strategy behind flexible workforce as a broader trend. So what I see time and again is if I have a problem, I try and immediately just fix that one specific challenge, often through an external partner, because honestly, that can be easier than getting any sort of collaboration done internally.
So before the recording, I told you about Rich Wilson, who told me about this like different wordings like freelancer, contractor,
Yeah.
and consultant, and they go from different budgets. So, in your experience, what is your favorite word to use when you are talking to enterprises?
Whichever word makes them comfortable with invoicing, I don't mind.
Is there a
They.
word that makes them comfortable with invoicing? I have no idea, really.
No, it's really interesting. I think the different words sort of come and go in and out of fashion. I think we're seeing a bit of a pushback on freelancer at the moment, which is interesting, except for quite specific sectors. Um, I think there is a problem with not having a joined up sort of glossary or directory of terminology in our industry. I think people chuck everything under contractor, or people think statement of work is some sort of magic get out of jail free card for compliance, or they think freelancers equals like designer or developer. Like there's all these sort of misconceptions and assumptions around what this different terminology means. And are we talking about the actual operating model, or are we talking about the skills that have been delivered? Or are we talking about how the work's being done? There needs to be more clarity on it. But typically, the sectors that I work across have their own very rigid terminology. Like, I'm not going to go into a construction business and start talking about freelancers. They are very much subcontractors and tradies. So you have to like stick in those swim lanes, otherwise you're going to blow people's minds.
Talking about minds. So, as like currently, we have already more than 15 conversations with other amazing experts in independent workforce, and almost everyone talks about the mindset. So, to start working with these independent experts, you have to switch your mindset from not owning people but being open to delegate it. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
very weird thing, because like managers usually they must delegate, and they're delegating to full-time workers, and still it's differently in delegating to some external experts. So what from
Yeah.
your experience, like the main mindset blockers, like what blocks them? Is it like a control part, or I don't know, management or payment part or communication part, or as you've said about like taxation, like what scares companies the most?
Yeah. No, really good question. I I sat in an IR35 forum, which again for non-UK listeners is about sort of disguised employees and off payroll workers. Like can you treat freelancers as you can employees? And the UK government has basically said if you want to do that, you can pay them like employees, and that means tax. So I was sat in an IR35 forum, and there was loads of organisations there that were like, basically, to summarize their points, they're saying, I want to keep working with contractors the way I've always worked with them. I don't want any risk. I do want to control them like employees. I don't want to pay tax. And you're like, yeah, that is a problem. that,
It's kind
that's,
of
that's the
like,
exact problem they're trying to solve, correct? So what's the mindset shift that needs to happen here to unlock what you want, right? And I think the problem that organizations have is that they are deeply wedded and comforted by the status quo because they know how it works. And the idea of changing a mindset around saying, well, if we made things much more output based and we didn't sort of supervise and control them, and we didn't micromanage them, and we treated them like peers who are capable of doing their work without being scrutinized, then we actually, this isn't a problem. This is a huge opportunity, and it unlocks a massive amount of potential like innovation and capability for our business. But the mindset of, but this is comforting and I know it and understand it. And when I did my, personnel qualification in 1995, this was the how it all flowed. So I'm comfortable with that. Like, unfortunately, the world has changed, which brings me on to like this. My second part of this answer would be those businesses still think that this is a strategic decision, like a choice that they're making. I push back on that really heavily when I speak to customers to say, like, this isn't a choice. The world has shifted underneath your feet. This isn't something that's being solely decided by businesses. Businesses aren't choosing to engage in freelance models. The workforce has chosen to engage in a freelance model. Like, the data backs this up. You can see things like salary aren't the only motivators for workers anymore. Actually, workers want autonomy, control, freedom, and those are the things that are driving people to choose how they work. So the idea that your traditional sort of route of salary equals worker, that's been eroded. And post-pandemic, we've just seen a massive shift in people's outlook towards how work gets done. Particularly in the UK, we're seeing a real problem with redundancies and a fairly static jobs market. And we're also seeing patterns around younger people choosing independent work. So moving away from traditional career paths, that straight diagonal line from junior to SVP and the golden watch is eroded. We're seeing 25-year-olds going to freelancing. We're seeing kids coming out of college with side hustles. We're seeing kids not go to college because they can learn it on YouTube for free and save themselves £100,000. So like the way work gets done has changed underneath their feet. So to some extent, going back to that I-35 example, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter how your organization feels about it, because the workforce is shifting around you, and the organizations that get that and unlock it really quickly are going to win, because they're getting the brilliant talent in that's worked across numerous like cutting edge projects, new technologies, different sectors. They bring all of this incredible experience out the box, ready to go. And the organizations, they're still like, oh yeah, but can I tell them when their lunch break is?
Yeah,
They're going to miss the boat. Sorry, that's the end of my rant.
You can't tell them anything, because otherwise they will report you or they will just leave, because that's how it works. It sounds like adapt or die. And the funniest thing that I've recently, like just this weekend, we watched with my wife the movie Her, about the person who fell in love with AI. And I checked, it was a movie of like 2013 year or something like that. And if I were watching that movie like in 2013, I wouldn't believe it. But now I was watching like, oh, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's possible. Maybe we are not on that level, but it's possible. And, people are always like talking about the years, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, blah, blah, blah. So talking about this future of work. So if companies, like in what time frame should companies adapt not to miss out? Like from your experience, how do you feel about that?
I try not to be too unilateral, because you don't want to tell people they've missed the boat, and I don't think it is that. I think take everything I've just said into account, but also understand that what we're talking about is relatively simple. There's lots of different factors and moving parts to this, but one of the things I try to do with Freeflexer is like demythologize what good looks like and what success looks like. People often already have all of this stuff in-house, but they just apply it to permies, and they don't apply it to anything else. So actually a lot of the sort of governance and control that you need already probably exists. It's my belief that you can get something that really, really works, that stands up on its own, and will scale as you scale and sort of build on the future within 90 days. I don't think that this is 12 months of change management. If your company has the appetite for it, then absolutely it's something you can change really, really quickly. The problem most organizations have, as I said before, is that they start challenge orientated. They don't start with the opportunities. They don't start with what's the outcome we're trying to achieve. They start with how do I fix this one annoying bit of regulation or this one annoying finance problem I have. So yeah, it doesn't take a lot of effort. It doesn't actually take a lot of budget. It's something that's relatively simple, but it does take the appetite to do it. So when I'm looking at sort of customers that would want to work with Freeflexer or any of my sort of partners, it's actually not what role do they do. It's not how long have they been in their position. It's not what sector they're in. It's are they open to change? It's that personality piece. Are they open to it? And if they are, it's really easy to bring them on the journey.
This episode of The Independent Workforce is brought to you by FreelancerMap, the home of freelancing. Whether you are looking to hire top freelance talent fast or a freelancer ready to find your next big project, FreelancerMap connects the right people with the right work. No endless job boards, no guesswork, just direct access to verified experts and opportunities across the globe. Visit freelancermap.com and start building your next success story today. I feel like it's also about talking to a right person, because from my experience, when I talk to recruiters and tell them about the contingent workforce, about hiring freelancers, they ghost me. And when I talk to CEO, tell them about like what I'm talking about, what we are building, what is happening in the world, and they're like, okay, go talk to these people, go make it work. Because they are interested, they understand, and also they make decisions. And I'm curious, like from your perspective, like two things. First of all, whom are you talking to? Is this like CEO, CTO, CIOs? Like who is the best person to talk to, and how do you persuade them to start making these changes and working with independent workforce?
Yeah, it varies. It really varies. So it depends on the type of business and scale of business. I love looking for businesses that are privately owned, sometimes family, but like ideally you find someone who does a bit of managing director, they have a bit of marketing, HR might be under their remit. They are perfect for me because they're just like, Jack, I'm too busy for this. Like, what, what do you want and how do I fix it? And then the persuasion piece is find a trigger that works for them. You'll very rarely find someone that wants to bite off change management. That's like saying, do you want to go to the doctors? No, unless something's wrong, I'm not going. And it's the same with change management, I think. So find a trigger that works for them. I'm lucky in the UK because the UK government's dropping loads of legislation on the economy, which obviously sort of pisses off business leaders. But for me, that's a great opportunity to go into businesses and say, this is changing around liability in your supply chain. Are you aware of it? Now's a really good opportunity to wrap your arms around it. Or this new Employment Rights Act is dropping. That's going to change how you contract and change how you treat employees once they're in the business. And it's not just compliance triggers. You can find organizations that are maybe they're restructuring or they're starting a new offering and they've got a new product or they're launching into a new sector. Any business transformation like that, to me, it feels like a great opportunity to involve flexible talent because you can bring in people to innovate, you can bring in people to augment your existing workforce and like flex it up or down as needed. So you can look for signs of organizations that are ready to go for some sort of transformation, because this goes like hand in glove with that stuff from my perspective. Or then you can find other like signs that business isn't doing so great and they will need to rely on flexible workers more as a necessity than as a strategic choice. So yeah, there's loads of different triggers, but you've got to find something that says to that business leader or that department head, this is what's in it for me. As I say, just offering up transformational change is not the way.
A little bit before we were talking about platforms, that if company needs freelancers, they need to go to a platform or somewhere else. So I'm curious, if you are working with a client and they need freelancers and they ask you for help, where do you go? Like what tools, networks, or maybe platforms do you rely on most?
I won't name drop, I don't think, but I would say it depends on what their needs are. It depends what their needs are, because I'm a big advocate for like teaching a man to fish and really owning this stuff. If you're setting up your customers to be completely reliant on suppliers, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong there, like change in business direction, change in business solvency, like if you're completely propped up on external vendors, I'd be a little bit concerned. So part of what I do would be to help them build out what a an engaged freelancer talent pool looks like directly. There's some businesses that do this amazingly in the UK. They're really, really good at it, and they actually do care about the freelancers on their bench. Now, the thing that like motivates freelancers to be part of a bench like that typically is there any work and when do I get paid? And if you don't do those fundamentals right, then you're not going to be able to build out a direct talent pool. But if you get them right, what you build is a really, really valuable little database of brilliant people ready to rumble. They understand your culture, your processes, your work. And it's like bringing in just a sort of super sub in the 90th minute to come in and deliver some amazing work and score you some goals. Like if you can get that working for you, I would advocate for that. And beyond that, I think it's pick the partners like and then strategically review them regularly to make sure that they're actually providing the ROI that you're hoping for. My work with YunoJuno sort of exposed me to how big some customer PSLs were. We'd be talking about over 200 recruitment and staffing agencies associated with one business. And to me, like once you've got to that point, what you don't have is preferred. It's not even an approved suppliers list. It's just a list. And it doesn't provide any value to you because it's not what you want is a small number of partners that will work hard for you and deliver for you. And in return, what they get is higher volume. I think the mistake a lot of businesses make with sourcing is they just sort of put out loads and loads of tenders, accept everyone onto their supplier list, and then just chuck out a brief ad hoc to see what lands. I'm all for competition, but that you're not going to get the best results that way. You want someone that you trust and understands you, I think.
Sometimes I have the stories when freelancers are getting contacted from different recruiters for the same opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
Yeah.
like so weird. Like, why do you do that? I kind of understand, of course, you need like things fast, but if you are like, putting it out there in the market and then waiting for who will be first, yeah, kind of yes. But
Yeah.
like the way you build your relationships, I don't know, it kind of like feels weird. And also, to a point, I feel like what companies usually give full-time people, you have job, you have paycheck, you have office, you have insurance. What else do you need? So I feel like freelancers' needs are a little bit different. So what should companies care about when working with freelancers to build these long-term relationships with them?
Well, I can tell you, when I started, I can tell you what it was. You go into an office and they go, here's your laptop, there's the toilet, and then they walk off. And that was it. And then sometimes the fire alarm would go and you go, oh shit, how do I get out of it? Like there was nothing. People didn't look after you. You were truly a hired gun and you were treated like it. I think there's some woolliness now in the UK about can I treat freelancers like employees? No. Can I treat them like humans? Yes. You can still be kind. Don't worry. Again, it's not rocket science. If you want somebody to perform in a like high performance environment, guess what you need to do? Are they comfortable? Do they have a cup of coffee? Do they understand the work? Do they understand the requirements? Have you properly briefed them? Have you spent the time with them to make sure that it's all going to go okay? It's amazing how many companies don't do those fundamentals. Onboarding is really, really important. I think in those senses, making the processes easy to follow, making like the compliance and the payment stuff really easy to follow, and then at the end, pay them quickly. And then the second point is pay them and pay them quickly, and then the third point is get feedback. No, I've never seen a business do that diligently. Some people say they do. But I've never seen a business, if you go in and challenge them and say, all right, well, show me the feedback from your last 100 flexible workforce engagements and give it to me in some sort of easy to assimilate data format. No, they don't do it. And that's crazy to me because these freelancer communities or flexible workforce communities are so tight knit. And they're way more powerful than things like Glassdoor because one bad review in one of those WhatsApp groups or Slack channels and you're sort of torched earth. So
Yeah.
I would absolutely do the offboarding and do it properly because even if things have gone horribly wrong, a grown-up conversation can fix that.
It sounds like a nosedive episode from the Black Mirror when everyone were related on a rating system, and I feel like companies are forgetting about this. That there are the word of mouth out there, and if they're treating freelancers like shit, so most likely they will like the word will spread out very fast, and most likely it will be harder and harder for you to hire these people, and then you will say that freelancing doesn't work because you treat them like shit. Of course, it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
if you could remove one barrier on the company side to make working with freelancers better, what would it be?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. It's a really good question. The most the common blockers I see are. Oh, wait a second, Yuri. You stumped me.
That's how it works, you know. Sometimes.
um, the common blockers that the thing I see time and time again is that people aren't proactively engaging, and they're not sort of blending their workforce models to incorporate this stuff. It's still stuck in that trend of we need to do more of the same rather than we need to innovate or grow. And I suppose it goes back to that mindset thing that the blockers are all really easy to navigate if you've got the mindset and the appetite to do it. But the thing that I find frustrating, I suppose, as a blocker is that constant sort of regard for the flexible workforce of it's simply a resource solution. We're short staffed, or we're busy, or we're not busy. We need to shift some heads. Like it's just this flexible element to it. And I think the mindset blocker of not thinking about these people as innovators and specialists and people that can move the needle in your organization strategically or financially or like improve results. I find that incredibly frustrating because often they'll be paying quite a decent rate for a real specialist, and then they'll get them to do the role of a business as usual X or whatever sort of function that they're fulfilling, rather than as someone that's come in to really do something magic. That's the opportunity that's being missed. I don't know if that counts as a blocker, but it's all you're getting out of me.
And what is the role of AI? Like, how do you see AI and automation reshaping the freelance market?
Great question. So I'm on a founding committee for an AI committee here in the UK called AI and Media Institute. And I look after the workforce tranche. And we had a panel last year around the sort of workforce and AI. So this is really relevant to me. I I think there's a huge gap between what's being marketed, what's on people's websites, and the reality. I think it's huge, and I think that's mostly peddled and perpetuated by AI companies who are absolutely desperate to maintain growth despite sort of plateauing products. Right. So I think there's this big push to sort of either FOMO people or scare people into acting. And what I see time and time again, the boots on the ground reality is very different to the sales deck. And that's not just supplier sales deck, that's also business sales decks. We're enabling AI to do X. It's like you look under the covers and actually you're not. Um, but the reality is, if you look at how fast something like ChatGPT has grown in 3 years and what 3 months or something, it's pretty stark about like how much that's integrated into our day-to-day lives now. And even businesses that aren't running official pilots around AI have to face up to the fact that there's this like phantom AI workforce already in their businesses. Because if you think your account manager is still writing their own emails, you're wrong. If you think even the commercial director is writing his own pitch proposals, you're wrong. Guess what? AI is really good at that stuff because it's good at frameworks, it's good at research. So I think the impact it will have on the flexible workforce specifically is going to be quite interesting. I'm expecting to see waves. I think we're in wave one of people saying, I don't need to bring in a copywriter, ChatGPT can do it. I think that's wave one. I think wave two is, I've lost my client because my copywriting was shit, so I need to bring in a freelancer. I think we'll see that applied across multiple sectors and skills and talent bases, because the idea that AI is capable of creating to a specialist level, I think we're still some way away from that. A good test for anyone that's interested in it, I think, is to pick a topic that you know really, really intimately and try to get an LLM to explain the nuance of it. And you'll pull it to pieces in seconds because it's not there. It doesn't do nuance yet. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a tricky couple of years for people in those industries. I've got friends in industries like transcreation and translation. Like you can see how um, uh, transcribing and translation work might be heavily impacted. But again, going back to the point of is an LLM that can transcribe into Spanish the same as Mexican? Will it understand the nuance and will it end up really badly offending someone? Like
You never
actually,
know. You never know.
actually, the nuance is really, really important in language. So you can sort of push back on that idea as well. So it's early days. I think clients of businesses are already saying like, I want to see cost savings because we can enable AI now. And businesses are sort of caught between a bit of a rock and a hard place. Customers saying prices should be coming down because of automation, but also them having to invest a massive amount in upskilling and tools to try and like access that automation. All the while, the technology has not actually got the capabilities that a lot of the sales decks say it does. So it's a bit of a mess at the moment, but I think over the next sort of couple of years, we'll see the end of that first wave of replacement.
Yeah.
Um, there's all sorts of perspectives on this from we'll all be gainfully employed. No one will ever have to do sort of desk work ever again, and it will be utopia, all the way through to the white collar bloodbath notion of, you know, kids will leave university with a degree and there'll never be an entry level job ever again, and they'll, you know, die on the streets. So somewhere in the middle.
I'm still waiting for self-tighten shoes and like flying boards. So, yeah, we'll see what will happen next. But they promised it
Okay.
like in 2000, I don't know, 20s or something that it didn't
I
happen. So,
know, I know.
I feel like AI is also really, really good in BSing people. So it's like brings a lot of bullshit into our daily conversation, all the things, and even to the point when people are creating job description and people creating their CV, everyone is uses AI, and then you have to use AI to retranslate what was created with AI into like the human language back, and sometimes it's like totally messing things up. You know, when you have
Yeah.
this there are these videos on YouTube when there is like a line of like, I don't know, 50 people, and one person in the beginning tells something to someone or shows something to someone, and then they like turn around and tell to each other, and then you see
Yeah,
like what
yeah,
the I feel like that's exactly what's going on also with all this AI world. But
yeah.
I feel like it's also making like people more experienced, and to your point that on the topic that you really, really understand well, yes, AI can be your help. But if you have no idea what you are talking about, nah, I wouldn't trust it. At least now. I don't know what will
No.
happen in a few months, but for now, no.
It's an incredible tool. Like from my perspective, starting a business has been incredible. I didn't know about how to start a business. I understand what my like IP is and how I can communicate it to people and how I can help people. But if I want something to help me like create structure around what a proposal should look like, or if I want something to help me work out what a sales funnel looks like, it's brilliant. It's like having a really well-informed intern, but I would never deploy it to communicate on my behalf, like in a meter in a sales deck, because it's my tone of voice and it's my experiences and expertise that people are buying into.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Jack, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit. So the final question. What advice would you give to companies just starting to use freelancers and to freelancers entering the market?
Okay, so for businesses, I would say start with your objectives. Don't start with a challenge, right? Don't be challenge orientated. What are the goals you're hoping to achieve by engaging a flexible workforce and work backwards from there? Treat them as you would any other worker cohort and put the sort of attention and rigor and budget behind that you would for any other part of your workforce. I think it deserves equal stake. The future is blended, and I'd love to see organizations think about it in those terms. It's not an augmentation; it's part of the fabric of your workforce. Um, And budgeting is actually my answer for freelancers as well. I think if you're going to go independent, think about your runway. It's a really exciting world. It's a really scary world if you don't get your budget right. I think often people talk about all the benefits, the flexibility, the autonomy, working with great businesses. But I'm a bit of a realist, and I know that if you can't pay your mortgage, that's going to put a lot of pressure on you. So I should introduce you to someone that reminds me about who does this stuff really, really well. But yeah, I would start with budget, work out what your runway looks like, and then proactively come up with a plan. Like start everything with a bit of project management, and you have to understand as well that the first 6 months is a sales cycle. It's just outbound.
And it's like a roller coaster. You either thriving or you like close to like zero or below zero. So it's always a question of like building your pipeline.
Independent work is not it's not about how skilled you are. It's an exercise in tenacity and resilience. I really believe that. It's can you keep showing up? Your skills will come. Like you have to back yourself. But if you don't give up, that's what separates a lot of people from success and failure.
Last but not least, name 2 people I should reach out to talk about the independent workforce.
Well, I just mentioned the chap in the UK that looks after Leapers, which is a freelancer and mental welfare organization. He also really helps organizations unlock talent pool capabilities. He's called Matthew, so I'll introduce you to him. And then a second guy, I can give you. Oh, let's give you someone really boring from inside the vendor scene. Do you want to talk about VMSs?
About everything.
Yeah. I'll connect you with someone who's supplier side, but someone. I've got a few sort of friends in that space, and their product's amazing, but their exposure, the coalface to all these different organizations and how work gets done, I think is really, really valuable. And I pick their brains quite a lot. So I'll connect you with him.
Got it. And what is the best way to connect with you?
Freeflexer.com is my website, or find me on LinkedIn, Jack Spencer, and then just add Freeflex. I'm sure I'll pop up. I pretty much live on there, so yeah.
You definitely pop up. I checked that, so it works that way.
I'm always up for talking shop, and very rarely get around to selling anything.
And yeah, Jack, thank you so much for not selling anything during the whole this conversation, and also bringing a lot of fun. You know, I was like, you're bringing a lot of energy, and I see that you clearly invested in what you are doing, and I see that you clearly see the difference and the future of this blended workforce and why it's important. So thank you so much for your passion, and also for I'm super happy to have met you. Yeah, so thank you for this conversation.
Same here. I loved it. Thanks for your time, mate.
And see you in the freelance world. And for listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Independent Workforce. I hope you've taken one step closer to working smarter with freelance talent. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to learn even more and share it with your colleague. And remember, the future of work is now.